Hey guys, so what I'm actually going to be doing today, I've had a lot of people request for me to kind of do an anatomy tutorial for them. I'm actually going to kind of do like a series of anatomy. The first one that I'm going to do is just like the whole body, basically, and then I'm going to do a couple other videos for hands, feet, face, eyes, all that other different stuff, but those are all going to be their own videos. This one is going to be just about the body. And I'm actually going to be doing it in real time for this one. I'm not going to be doing anything sped up or anything like that. You're going to see my exact process, and I'll even let you see all of my horrible mistakes because I don't draw anything perfect the first time. That's just how I am. So what I'm actually going to be using is Photoshop. I know a lot of people use Paint Tool Sai, but I've been using Photoshop a lot lately. If you want to, I can do another video in Paint Tool Sai if you'd rather see that, but for right now I'm going to be doing it in Photoshop. And I'm not using the basic brushes. The brushes that I'm actually using I downloaded um, from someone else on DeviantArt. She's really famous. I think her name is Diane, something like that. I'll put a link in the description to the brushes if you want them. They're actually really fantastic, especially for painting and um, everything else like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you really need to figure out, of course, is what pose you want to do. There are thousands of poses, and of course, some of them can be very difficult to do. I'll go ahead and right now, for this first pose, I'll do the standard just kind of standing there pose. And just to let you guys know, I do have a very strange way of kind of describing things. I'm not, like a professional artist or teacher or anything like that, so I don't know the exact names of like this part of the body or whatever that I'm drawing at the time. So I'll probably just call things this and that and but I'll do my best to describe what exactly I'm doing to help you guys out. Right now, what I'm doing is obviously just I call it the skeleton part of the body or of the process, where you just kind of figure out where you want everything to be. Um, I won't lie, usually, oops, I messed this up. Okay, there. Usually, when I draw the skeleton, when I'm actually doing the next stage of the sketch, I usually change my mind. I'll do my best to not do that in these videos so that you can see exactly what I'm doing, but I do like to change my mind about poses quite often, but I'll do my best not to do that. Sometimes what happens is that I will end up accidentally drawing the legs way too long. A good rule to think about while you are drawing the body is to make sure that the the length of the legs from a little above the hips to the foot is the same length as from here to the top of the head. That's a good way to see it, but usually I always have to go in and fix the size of the legs. I usually always have to do that because I just can't ever tell until I actually get the body started drawing. Like I can already tell that this is too high. Usually the hardest thing that I have trouble with is figuring out where I want to put the arms or what I want the arms to be doing. That's like one of the most annoying things for me. I guess we'll just have this one. And now as far as the length of the arms go, the best way to think about that is the elbow should line up with the belly button. And if the arm is going completely just straight down. The tip of the fingers should match up with the middle of the thigh. That's the best way that I've learned about how long to draw the arms. Usually I end up drawing them too long anyway, and I just have to fix it, you know, but once you start drawing the actual body part, it's easier to tell. So that's the skeleton part of the body. It's usually pretty easy to do this part. I always do this first. For the most part, sometimes I just go straight to the body, or, you know, it just depends on how I'm feeling, but for this purpose of the tutorial, we'll draw skeletons for each individual pose that I'm going to do. And I always like to draw the shape of what the hands are going to be in. And I usually draw little nubs for the feet because that's, I don't know. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and make a new layer. It's always best to do each separate section of the sketch on a different layer, unless you like it all in one layer, that's fine. You know, it all depends on what you do in your own drawing process. Everyone draws differently. That's just how it is. So what I like to do is I like to draw each separate section of the sketch on different layers. So I had the skeleton here, and I bring down the opacity down to like almost nothing, to where it's barely visible. And then I make the new layer. And this layer I'm going to be doing the actual like naked body. Of course I don't draw like all the details or whatever, so you're not going to be seeing any like gross stuff, but I just draw like the body without any clothing, just the basic shape. For the head, I usually always just draw a circle, like, or an oval like this, kind of like a awkward shape oval. I can go into more detail about that when I make the video about just the head, but you can see it's kind of like a large circle with like this little triangle thing underneath it. That's the way that I do them. Of course, I just, hard to explain. I usually just have, you know, it's like in the shape of this large circle, and then it has the little triangle thing underneath it. Of course, it's going to be different for each, you know, different head position that you do. But again, you'll see that in different poses that I'll do later, and when I actually do the head tutorial. But the human head, it doesn't go like this. You know, it doesn't like, you know, you can draw it that way if you wanted to. That's another good way to draw it. But it has this split off section right here, and then it has this section where it hangs off the back. So it's kind of it's best to draw it and split it into two different sections. And this section right here is actually for the ear, where I would draw the position of the ear. And it's always good to draw the ear because you need to have an idea of where the ear is going to be able to draw, you know, where the eyes and the nose and the mouth and all that's going to be. And of course, I don't like the way it looks, so I'm going to fix it. And like I said, I don't draw anything perfect the first time, so you'll be seeing me fixing a lot of things too. But I think that's good for the tutorial, so you can see how I fix and edit things to make it look how it should. Okay, so once you're happy with the head, you know, you just got to move on to the rest. I can already tell that this head I've drawn is going to be too big. So I'm going to go ahead and make it smaller. You always want to make sure that the size of the head is proportionate to the size of the shoulders. The length of the shoulders, or the width of the shoulders, should be the size of the width of the head. That's a good way to go about it when you're thinking of when you're drawing like an anime style, or even, you know, any other type of style. it's always good to range the width of the shoulders the same as the width of the head. That's the way that I do it. As for the neck, there's always specific points where you should start out. Of course, it's different for a man or a woman. This one's going to be a female body since I do draw them a little bit better. So I'll do a male body in the same pose in just a second after this one. But the position of the neck, it all depends obviously on the pose. But the main thing is that you always want to make sure, that it's not just, there's a lot of different anime styles, but if you just like this, that obviously that just doesn't look right. It doesn't fit with how the body is supposed to look. The neck kind of goes into different sections, and it has all these type of tendons and sections of muscle that is really important to draw, to make it look a little bit more realistic. Even though of course it is an anime style, it's never going to be realistic, but it's always good to draw those. I think it makes it look what's a word? I just think it makes it look, I don't know, better. It gives it more dimension. I guess that's the best way to put it. If you put the actual muscle form or the forms of the arms, forms of everything into the body when you're drawing it, it helps you not only to define clothing, but you can give characters different body shapes, different muscle tones, and that will make them more unique instead of just, the normal square anime body. And the neck, I always stop the neck about right here. And then you're going to go in and start the shoulders. Now I always like to draw the collarbone before I start the shoulders, and I always kind of give it like a defined section right here where the collarbone kind of meets the shoulders, and then the shoulders come in after that. Now you can see the head is still a little bit too big for what I've drawn the shoulders. So what you could either do if that happens, you could either make the shoulders bigger or just make the head smaller. I'm going to go ahead and again make the head smaller. Now you can see it kind of looks better. The head, it's maybe still a little bit too big. Let's try that again. Okay, so that's better to me now. So the head is kind of in proportion with the shoulders. It's kind of the same width as the shoulders, and that's what you really want to go for when you're drawing anything really. And I'm also going to make this a little bit smaller since usually when I start drawing things, it gets smaller and smaller. That's why I said I usually don't follow the skeleton that much, because it just kind of goes all wonky when I'm drawing it. Right, so that's usually the shoulders. And then for usually what I start with next is the torso. Once I have the shoulders kind of figured out where they're going to be. And like I said, I always draw the form of the muscle. Alright, so obviously the next step just depends on if you're doing a male or a female body. This time I'm going to do a female body, and in a second I'll do a male body to show you the difference. So what I usually do is I just kind of judge from the shoulders down to where the torso is going to be, and that's where you begin to draw the chest. And it's the same for a male. Obviously it just doesn't go out this way. doesn't look terrible. Okay. And if you want to, I can make a specific video describing everything about a female and everything about a male specifically. If you'd like that as well, this one is just kind of a basic, all around, just basic body information on how I do it. You just gotta let me know what you want to see and I'll do it. Okay, so after you get the chest done, either for the male or the female, then you do have to do the rest of the torso. These are not in the right spot. Let me move them over just a little bit. Okay. An easy way to judge, where everything needs to go that, a lot of beginner people or a lot of beginners usually do, but I don't do it anymore. You can do those big, huge shapes if that helps you kind of judge where everything is supposed to go. Like that's the width of the torso, and then for a female, usually people draw like the square that way. And it just comes out and meets right there. Or I usually don't draw this, so I don't really know all that much. And then usually there's another circle and it comes down to meet it this way. And then 2 more circles for the hips, which come down and meet that way. And that's another way to draw the body first. If you are really confused, just draw the shapes that you want to, have put into the body and then just kind of connect them all. I don't have to do this anymore. I just kind of visualize it in my head. But obviously people who aren't to that point, it may be necessary for you to need to do to kind of help you figure out where you want to put everything. I'll keep that on there just really small so that you can kind of see. And then after the chest, either for a male or female, then I usually draw the rest of the torso. I usually start with the back here, and the back, it always needs to be further out than where the chest ends because there is a section of body right here. It can't just be, the chest is right here and then, oh, there's the back. That's not how the body works. There is a section right here. And the arm is going to be covering that right there. That's going to be a little bit different, but I just usually draw it like this first so I can figure out where to put it. And of course, it also all depends on the body shape that you're giving the character that you're drawing. And everyone has their own way of drawing, the belly button and everything. This is how I draw mine, kind of like a line coming down. And then, the belly button itself, which usually I do more of a defined shape. I usually draw this for characters that have more defined stomach, kind of like more muscle or anything like that. Or if they're just a skinnier character, I like to draw that line down. It's just a preference from style, just depends on how you draw the belly buttons yourself. And as you can see, the way I drew the body shape, it goes with those shapes that I put in before. Like I said, I usually just have those in my head. I don't usually draw them. It helps sometimes to have them if I'm really having trouble, but I usually don't like to have them. I usually just like to draw the body itself because it's faster, I guess. Now, I typically always leave the little arms for last, so we'll come in and do those in a second. I'll go ahead and move on to the legs. As for the hips, again, it all depends on the character that you're drawing, but a character's body should never be like this. Let me do an example. Like, here's the neck, and then the chest, and then a character's body should never just go like this. There's no definition, there's no anything, and that's how a lot of anime actually is. They don't draw the body definitions, it's just like a straight line. Like here's the chest, and then it's just like no hips. And the curvature of the body is something that is very difficult to draw. The best thing to do is that the way that I've learned how to do it is just look at anatomy books of realistic anatomy and just kind of incorporate that into your anime style, and then it'll look a lot better, look a lot more realistic, and just because believe me, I used to draw the stick people, the straight stick people too, until I really started looking at real anatomy and figuring out, how the body is supposed to look. But I never liked the realistic style. I don't like drawing that way. I never really have. I have always liked the anime style that I've made on my own. This is my own style. And I've kind of just mixed in what I like about realism into the anime style so that it looks, I don't know. I just like the way it looks a lot better when the body has curves and everything like that instead of just being the straight boring anime bodies, I guess. And then for the legs, I'm kind of not feeling the position of the skeleton that I did before, so I'm just gonna fix it a little bit. I'm sorry. I know I said that I wouldn't do that, but if I don't like it, then I can't continue with it. So, and since at first I didn't know if I was gonna do a female or a male, I'm gonna make it a little bit more of a feminine pose, I guess. All right. And again, I can already tell the legs are going to be too long for the body, but I'll fix that afterwards. And the legs are the same concept as the body. Make sure that you add the curvature of the calf and the thighs. Emphasize on the knee. Don't just make the legs a straight line. Because no one, has straight legs like that. And I know that it might be easier to do, but if you just go the easy route when you're drawing, you'll never improve and it'll never look how you want it to look in your head. Unless you want it to look like that. I mean, everyone has their own specific style of what they'd like to do. As for the feet, I usually just do this weird kind of clumpy shape at first when I'm doing just the base body, just so I can, kind of figure out what side or what direction I want the foot to be facing. You want to try to never do the feet like this if they're standing straight, because if you draw the feet like this, if the person is supposed to be standing, straight facing you, that just looks like they're floating. I mean, if you're going to draw them with heels on, then you can do that. But if they're just standing like this and they're wearing sneakers or something, then that just makes them look like they're floating. And that was something that my grandma actually pointed out to me when I was first learning. She told me to do this, to have the foot shape, kind of how it would realistically look instead of facing like that, because that just makes them look like they're floating when you have them all kind of weird like that. And again, I usually have trouble following the skeleton because I end up not liking the position that I have it in, which is happening again, but I'm just going to go with it. And this one, it's okay to kind of have it look like it's floating on this side, because it's further back. It looks like she's stepping or lifting her foot like she's about to start walking. It just depends on the position if you want to have, if the foot is going to look okay if it's like that floating position. And as you can see, the legs are too long for the body. So what I'm going to go ahead and do to fix that, first of all, I need to fix this because that hip is ridiculous. What I'm actually going to do is zoom out. I'm going to take the leg part where it should be equal to the body length, and I'm just going to make it smaller. Pull it down a little bit. And then just connect them back. Sometimes you might have to adjust the position of like this area that I'm drawing right now, the forbidden area, and also adjust the butt where the butt would be sticking out in this specific position. Oh my gosh, why am I having so much trouble? Okay. Usually when you're at a 3/4 pose like this one, this side of the legs is going to look bigger than this side, because this side you'll actually kind of see a little bit of the curvature of the butt, which is why I was kind of making it look bigger. Okay, and then after that we can go ahead and get into the arms. I usually like to draw the legs first so that I can judge how long to make the arms. That's usually what I go for. And again, if you have trouble drawing any of this, you can, without the shapes, you can add the shapes. They would just you just make circles and you make tunnel shapes depending on, what direction it's going in. And the tunnel shape might actually help you to add the curves of the body in whichever way. But again, I don't like to use these. They just kind of distract me because I just see it in my head anyways. So for the arms, I'm going to go ahead and erase that. Like I said, it's always good to add the muscle form of the arms. This part of the armpit usually always connects to to the chest area like that. Even on a guy, it connects that way. And again, I usually just draw a weird shape of whatever I'm going to do the fingers for the next stage of the sketch. This is a pretty muscly lady we're working with right now. Okay, so again, like I said for the arms, the elbow should always kind of equal out to where, if the arm is straight, then the elbow needs to equal out where the belly button is. That's kind of how I judged how long to make this arm. You can see how because it's bent, it's just a little bit above the elbow. I mean, a little bit above the belly button because it's bent. It's a lot of it is just kind of eyeing it. I guess that's the best way that I do it. I just kind of eye it about how long it needs to be. And if you zoom out, you can kind of see that if the arm was extended, this arm might be a little bit long, I'll fix it. But if it was extended, then the fingers would need to end about right here. Yeah, no, that arm's about right. So now on this arm, I'm just going to draw it straight and blocky like normal anime. And so you'll see the difference between it and how it looks. It's completely different. Let's see if I can even do it. See, I'm still trying to put curve in there and stuff. So you see the difference between like normal anime, just very stiff, straight lines, very sharp points. That the difference between this and this just looks so much better to me when you add the curves. Just take the extra time to add the curves in. It just makes everything look so much better. The skeleton is too long, so it's throwing me off, so I'm just gonna fix it. And yes, the elbow is pointy, but it's not like that. You know, there is curve to it. Just the basic shape of the hand that I'm going to do later. And then that's basically how I do the second part of the sketch. And this character is obviously, you know, a little bit muscular, probably works out a lot. So that's usually how I do, the base sketch. Um, and the way that I figure out the proportions of the body. It's just, you draw the skeleton. If it helps you, then you can do this. You can do these shapes, to kind of figure out the form of the body. If that helps you. It does not help me anymore. I used to do it when I first started, but I don't need it anymore. After you just draw the bodies over and over and over again and just kind of figure it out, you don't need that anymore. And you can just kind of figure out the shape of the body on your own. And so for the third part of the sketch, I usually, I make this really light. And I actually go in and I do the clothing and all of that. The hair, I define the shapes of everything else. I define the shapes more of everything. If there's any body parts showing, then I define that. I draw the fingers and the toes and all of that. Um, I'm not going to describe how I draw the fingers and the toes in this video since that's more complicated. I'll do that in a video on its own. So usually I always start out with the hair first, and we'll just do some random chick. If y'all want to know exactly, how I do everything as far as hair goes, I'm gonna make one for clothing. If you want to know how I figure out where to put the hair and everything, I can do one for that too. Define the ear, like I said, I go through and I define all the body parts of, where everything is at. If any of the body parts are showing and not going to be covered up by clothing or by hair, then I just define it more. Give her a ponytail. Something easy. Okay. Then after you do the hair, then you go in and like I said, you just define the rest. This is where I do more of the shape of the face instead of having it just, that square or that oval shape. I go in and define it and I make the jaw straighter, and if this part of the face was showing, I would, define the brow line and the cheek and just come in, but I'll do that on a different video to show you how I do the face exactly. Same for the clothing. I'm going to make completely different video for the clothing to kind of describe how I figure out where to put the creases and how to make it look believable. If that is something that you guys would be interested in, of course. Usually I don't add the fine details in clothing until like until when I'm actually doing the line art, but that's just a personal preference. I don't like to do all the like little bitty details like jewelry and stuff like that until I'm actually line arting that way. It's easier for me to just get that done with. Hands are usually the thing that I have the hardest time with. I usually have to redo them over and over and over again. Let's see if I can get it right my first time. Or just close enough for the purpose of this video anyway, because I think that's close enough for the purpose of the video. I know it's terrible, but just whatever. It's good enough right now. Let's see. Usually the hands in my sketches look really terrible until I go through and line art them and actually, fix them a little bit better. So I'm sorry if it looks like a friggin' truck ran over her hand or something. You always want to make sure, but we'll say this about the clothing is you always want to make sure that the clothing is following the form of the body um, to make it look more realistic. She got some short shorts. Even though I like drawing them, I usually really like to draw characters barefoot or with just little flats on the most. I usually don't like drawing tennis shoes, but it seems to fit best with the type of character that we're drawing right now. That calf is freaking gigantic. Gotta fix that. Too big. As far as, how I figure out where to put the shoes and everything like that, I'll do it in the other video that I'm going to do for feet. Because it's a whole separate difficult thing in itself. So that is pretty much just the basics on how I draw the body, how I figure out, where I'm going to put everything, especially by just by going with those steps, first drawing the skeleton section and then just the plain body without without too much of the fine details, and then, you redraw the next sketch with the clothing and everything. And that's usually the steps that I take to draw a body. Sometimes if I'm going pretty quick, then I can just draw the body without even having to do the other sketches. It really just depends on my mood or how fast I need to go or anything else like that. But I usually take these steps in any drawing that I do. And if you need this, then you can always implement that in your drawings. Just use the basic shapes that you would need and put them into the spots, to help you with figure out how long the body needs to be or anything else like that. And let's see if I did it correctly with the legs being about the height of the torso. Okay, so the legs are obviously a little bit longer than the torso, or a lot longer than the torso. So it really just depends on your style, because if I made, you just have to look and see how it would look. Because if I made the legs the size of the torso, it would look really funny. Like, that doesn't look right to me. So usually I do always have the legs a little bit longer, even though the rule is that the legs are supposed to be about equal to the size of the torso plus the head, or the length of the arms. There's all different sorts of rules and things like that. But with anime or your own specific style, you can really do whatever you want with it. To create your own specific style. There's really no rules. I mean, if you're doing realism, then obviously you have to follow all the rules. But with anime and those particular styles, it's stylized. It doesn't have to be perfect, and everyone does their own specific thing. But the things that I do, as far as adding the muscle tone in certain areas, and the curvature and everything, it's better than the typical, usually an anime girl would probably look a lot like this, like the typical anime girls, like, super skinny, and then it's just like flat. And, the super small neck, and then the shoulders, and then the arms are just kind of straight. That, I mean, if you have that particular style and you can make it look good, then that's your style. But I personally like the body having a lot of form. It just looks better. It's prettier. Okay, so we have the basic body here. I'm not going to draw the face because I don't feel like fighting with that, and I'll do that about the face and stuff like that in a different tutorial. I'm also decided that I'm not going to do the male in this one. This one's just going to be specifically female. I'll do another video for male since it is different and it is a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, to draw a guy than it is to draw a girl. So I'll go ahead and what I'm going to do next is just a couple more poses. I'm probably not going to talk a lot though, since everything I do is exactly the same. If I think of anything else I need to say, then I'll pitch in. But everything else is going to be from this point on kind of fast forward, and just me doing different poses. Alright, and that's the basics on how I draw a female body. Hopefully all of my tips and all of my information that I gave was useful in some way. If you have anything else that you want to specifically see, please just let me know down in a comment or in a message what you would like to see so that I can get that done for you. I'm already planning to do a male version of this as well as one specifically for the hair and for the hands and feet and for the face specifically as well. Alright, but anyway, thank you guys so much for watching and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. That way I know that you like it and it will also allow me to be able to do more videos the more subscribers and likes that I get. Alright, well I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!